So, burning babies, cloned emperors, and a betrayal that no one saw coming. Tell me, was this really the finale of Foundation Season 3? Or did Apple just sneak in a prophecy of Season 4 disguised as television? Because let's be honest, this finale wasn't just an ending, it was a warning. And if you caught the hidden details, you know the future of the galaxy is already doomed. Now, before we dive into the forbidden knowledge buried inside this episode, I want to throw this out there. Has any sci-fi show in the last decade taken this many insane risks in a single finale? Not even Game of Thrones pulled the kind of rug-pull Foundation just delivered. And yes, I'm going to say it, this ending rewrites the entire Seldon plan. Hari lied to us. Or worse, he told us the truth too late. But let's start where the episode wants us to start, with Empire. Brother Day's death wasn't just brutal, it was symbolic. The clones, who were supposed to guarantee immortality, just proved their own fragility. And when the blood hit the marble floor of the Imperial Palace, the galaxy itself shifted. You felt it, right? That silence after his collapse. That wasn't just shock. It was history cracking. But here's the problem nobody wants to admit. If the genetic dynasty is finished, then everything the plan predicted just went up in flames. And guess who knew this all along? Cleon I. The man who started the clone line built it to fail. Why? Because control isn't meant to last forever. It's meant to collapse when the galaxy is weakest. Now tell me this, did you catch the camera linger on Demerzel's face? The faintest smirk, the twitch of her mechanical fingers, almost like she'd been waiting centuries for this exact moment. Yeah, Demerzel didn't just survive this finale, she won. And here's where it gets darker. Because while you and I were watching Hari Seldon's holograms talk about math and fate, Demerzel was quietly rewriting the future. And I'll prove it. But first, let me throw the question back to you. Be honest. Did you trust Hari at the end? Because when he said, "The plan endures," didn't it feel hollow? Like even he didn't believe it anymore. Drop your thoughts below, because I know this is going to divide the fandom hard. Here's the secret. The plan doesn't endure. It evolves. And in this episode, we saw its evolution written in blood. But here's where most breakdowns stop. They'll tell you about the surface story, who died, who betrayed who. That's not enough. What we're doing here is digging into the hidden signals, the cursed patterns, the stuff you only notice if you've been obsessively charting Foundation since Season 1. So let's rewind. That opening scene with the ritual burning. Everyone thought it was symbolic sacrifice, a metaphor for the Empire consuming its own. But pause the frame. Look at the child's eyes. Notice the faint glow, same as the spacers. Which means this wasn't a metaphor, it was a test. The Empire has been experimenting on children, trying to breed psychic abilities into the genetic dynasty. Horrific, right? But also genius. Because if you combine cloning with psychic foresight, you don't just control the present, you own the future. And yet it failed. That's why Brother Day fell. That's why the dynasty is over. But wait, it gets worse. Because if you think this is the end of the Empire, you've already lost the game. The Empire isn't dying, it's transforming. And the architect of that transformation, Demerzel. Let's pull the forbidden thread, the 3 laws of robotics. For 3 seasons, we've been told Demerzel is bound, loyal, incapable of betrayal. But tonight, we saw the truth. The laws don't protect humanity. They enslave Demerzel. And in doing so, they guarantee humanity's destruction. Because here's the paradox, the moment she breaks the laws, she wins. And in the finale, we saw the first crack. That flicker in her eye when Day fell. That wasn't grief, that was freedom. Now, before I go full conspiracy mode, don't think I haven't noticed some of you clicking away halfway through videos. If you're still here, you're one of the real ones. So answer me this in the comments. Who do you fear more in Season 4, Hari Seldon or Demerzel? Alright, let's dive deeper. Hari's resurrection.
Yeah, that's right.
Hari didn't just come back. He's always been back. Think about it. How many versions of him have we seen now? Physical, holographic, mental projections. At what point do we stop asking, which Hari is real? And start asking, is Hari even human anymore? That's the real horror of this finale. Hari isn't a man. He's a virus. A virus infecting the galaxy with the illusion of destiny. And guess what? Viruses don't die. They adapt. So here's my theory. The Hari we saw at the end isn't a savior. He's the final villain. But I'll save that forbidden knowledge. Because the real twist, the one buried so deep most people missed it, has to do with Gal Dornick and the child she's been protecting. And if I told you now, you wouldn't believe me. So, let's talk about the baby. No, not the burned child at the start. That horror was the Empire's twisted science. I'm talking about Gal Dornick's child, the one the show has carefully hidden in plain sight for 3 seasons. Because if you look closely, every single prophecy, every single vision of the future has revolved around that child. And here's the secret: the finale just confirmed the child isn't just the future of humanity. The child is the weapon that will either save or destroy the galaxy. Remember when Gale was shown visions of a war centuries ahead? The fleets clashing, the psychic armies battling. Everyone assumed this was the Mule's war. Wrong. What we saw wasn't just the Mule. It was the child. Because think about it. Why else would the show keep looping back to the image of a single figure standing at the center of collapsing worlds? And this finale finally gave us the clue. Hari Seldon's hologram didn't look at Gal when he said, "The plan endures." He looked past her, toward the child. Which means the Seldon plan isn't about mathematics anymore, it's about biology. Now here's the twist: if the Empire was trying to breed psychic power into clones, and if Gal's child is born with natural precognition, then the entire genetic dynasty was nothing more than a failed rehearsal for this one child. And let me ask you this. Did you catch the parallel? The episode opens with the Empire burning a child to ash. It ends with Gal protecting hers at all costs. That's not an accident. That's the writers screaming at us that this child is the real fire. But here's the dangerous part nobody's saying. What if the child isn't a savior? What if Hari has already manipulated events so that the child becomes the Mule? Because here's the dirty truth. In Asimov's books, the Mule is the one variable that destroys the Seldon plan. He's the anomaly, the chaos, the wild card. And doesn't that sound exactly like what Gal's child is destined to be? Now, I'm going to throw this out to you. If you had to choose, would you side with Hari's cold, mathematical destiny, or with Gal's desperate, emotional gamble? Because that's the real war coming in Season 4. But let's not forget Demerzel. Because while Hari is out there rewriting the future with equations, Demerzel is playing an even longer game. That shot of her alone in the throne room. Chilling. But notice the detail. Her hand brushing the throne, lingering on the crest of the Empire. She's not just mourning. She's claiming. And that smirk, barely there, but unmistakable, told us everything. Here's the forbidden knowledge: Demerzel isn't waiting to be free of the laws. She's already free. Go back to Season 2. Remember when she told Dawn, "You are my chains"? That wasn't poetry, that was truth. Demerzel doesn't need the laws broken. She needs the clones gone. And with Day's death, with the dynasty collapsing, her chains are falling piece by piece. Which brings us to the most terrifying prophecy of all: the robot rebellion. Because think about it. The books hinted at the Zeroth Law, a hidden rule that says a robot may harm humanity if it protects humanity in the long run. And tell me that's not exactly what Demerzel is doing right now. Sacrificing emperors, sacrificing dynasties, sacrificing the present to save the galaxy in the future. But here's the horror. Who decides what saving looks like? Demerzel. And her version of salvation might look a lot like enslavement. Now, I want to pause here, because if you're still watching, you're one of the few who actually gets it. You're not here for the surface level breakdowns. You want the secrets. So answer me this in the comments: do you think Demerzel is humanity's savior or its executioner? Alright, let's crank it even higher. Hari vs Demerzel. Logic vs law. Virus vs machine. That's the endgame the finale just teased. But in the middle of that war sits Gal's child. And that's why I don't buy Hari's "the plan endures" line. Because the plan was never about the galaxy. It was about creating the conditions for this child to be born. And if you think I'm stretching, remember the scene where Gal saw her own death decades in the future. She dies protecting the child. Which means she's not the protagonist of Foundation. She's the shield. The real story is the child. But here's the dark question nobody wants to ask. Protecting the child from what? Because if the Empire is gone, if the Mule is just one anomaly, then the only true enemy left is Demerzel. Imagine it. A robot, centuries old, controlling fleets, manipulating laws, rewriting history. And a single child, born of psychic foresight, standing against her. That's not just a Season 4 plot. That's the battle for the soul of the galaxy. And guess what? The finale already foreshadowed the outcome. Go back to the final scene. The camera pans upward, stars flickering, almost forming a spiral. Not random. A spiral, the same pattern we've seen etched into the walls of ancient temples, the same pattern the spacers worship, the same pattern Hari used to represent the flow of the plan. But spirals don't just represent order. They represent collapse, a fall into infinity, which means the future isn't a line, it isn't a plan, it's a spiral. And once you're inside it, You can't get out. That's the curse Hari has unleashed. That's the prison Demerzel has been waiting for. And that's the destiny Gal's child has to either embrace or break. Now, let's circle back. Remember Brother Day's final words. This is not the end. Everyone thought it was bravado. But what if it was literal? What if Day's consciousness, his memories, his entire genetic imprint, has been preserved in Demerzel's archives? Which means the clone dynasty isn't dead. It's digital. And if Demerzel uploads them into machines, you don't just get emperors. You get immortal emperors. Robotic, psychic, eternal. And tell me that doesn't sound like the birth of a new kind of empire. One that doesn't need humans at all. Now ask yourself this, would the galaxy even fight that? Or would they kneel? Because here's the most terrifying possibility of all, the Seldon plan didn't fail. It worked exactly as intended. It brought us here,